Alright, so for those of you just tuning in, my name is Resonance22, and welcome back to part 5 of my Let's Play of Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. Definitely make sure to check the video description below for the previous parts and watch that first. I also do plenty of content for Age of Empires 2, miscellaneous strategy games, Nintendo games, and Ace Attorney is one of my favorite franchises of all time. Thank you so much in advance for supporting the channel by leaving a like and a comment on this video, as it really helps out a lot. And it also motivates me to continue producing more Age of Empires content. And it grows the AoE community as well and my channel. So without further ado, let's jump straight into part 5. We're getting near the end, but I believe this will be 6 parts. So, let's do it. Make sure you watch the previous parts first. And again, thank you so much for the support. Hope you're all excited. So yeah, anyone's thoughts in the Twitch chat in the case so far? Let me know. Where do you think we're going? Pain is not French now. When I noticed the trap, I put the card in the bottle to dispose of it. And when I put the hat on the victim's head, let's just say I had a reason for doing that as well. So sketch. Why? Why, Phoenix? Please tell us the truth. A reason? That reason is right here. Your cell phone? I was trying to call Shouty Smith and he just wouldn't pick up for some reason. He was just out cold. So I gave up. I just left him a voicemail. That night, recall that I spoke with Defense Attorney Gavin after calling the police. Just in case, I recorded our conversation. But what's this? Now that we're all here, I see no reason why I shouldn't play it back for the court. Kristoph, I seem to be in a bit of trouble. What's this? Game not going well? Something like that. The gentleman who challenged you, he turned out to be good? He turned out to be dead. Someone hit him. Hard. You mean someone cracked the flawless bone china pate? It wasn't you, was it? Me? Please. The cops should be here any minute. I'm in your hands. Should it come to that. Oh, it was plate, duh. Bone china plate? A kind of porcelain, very smooth and shiny. And not plate, but pate. What? I believe he was referring to a certain gentleman's balding forehead. The court appreciates the defendant's discretion in not indicating my forehead. I love this game. Wait a second, something's not right about that phone call. So after Mr. Gavin ate dinner with you, he left the Borscht Bowl Club? Most certainly. Then, how did he know? When did he see this bone china pate? Yeah, a lot of good questions in chat. Oh, that's right. Yes? That was when I began to see my good friend in a different light. Troubled, I returned to the crime scene. And when I spotted Mr. Smith's head again, I realized exactly what was wrong. I love this music. Well, Mr. Gavin, the stage has been set. Perhaps you would like to explain this to the court. Exactly how did you come by your privileged knowledge of the victim's head? Hey John Fist, welcome to the stream. Hope you check the series out on YouTube. So, this is your reason. The reason why you put the victim's hat back on? Your point, Mr. Gavin? It's come down to this, hasn't it, Phoenix Wright? Order! I will have order, Mr. Payne! Yes, Your Honor. I believe this court has been left with no other choice. Are you prepared to hear Defense Attorney Gavin's testimony? Ahem. Well, as prosecutor, Very well. We'll break for 10 minutes. After which, Mr. Gavin will take the stand for a cross-examination. Are we all clear on that?
Crystal clear, Your Honor.
Very well. This will be the final recess for the day.
Defendant Lobby Simulator number 3. Mr. Gavin and Mr. Wright are both in the judge's chamber. Who'd have thought today would turn out like this? May I? Huh? What? Hello, sir. Please pick a card. What's all this about? Is this one okay? Excellent. I have a message for you. The last hand is about to be played. You'll need a trump card to make it.
A trump card?
The card you've chosen is magical. Use it wisely, and the game is yours. That's all.
An ace? Where do I remember that card from?
Mr. Smith's hand had 3 aces, and Mr. Wright's 2. It is 5 aces in all. It is true, I have seen it. The 5th ace. There was cheating, I swear to you. The missing 5th ace. Wait, this splotch of red. Is this blood? You have your trump card, and now it's up to you to cut the deck and draw. The truth. My father's fate is in your hands. I know you can do it.
And that, my friends, is Phoenix Wright's daughter. This bloodstained card is my trump card for finding the truth? I fell deep into thought as my mind raced to understand what this all meant. That girl, I'd seen her recently, but where? Where did Apollo see that girl before? Rob's J says, oh my gosh, the judge is in a portrait on the wall. Oh yeah, it's the little Easter eggs like that that make the game great. Absolutely great. Come on, wouldn't you want your portrait on the wall? Robsy says, does Apollo Justice have gloves on? Chain of evidence? No! Yeah, he should be wearing gloves when he takes the evidence. That's when I made the connection. Bloody Ace added to the court record. April 20th, 2:45 p.m. District Court, courtroom number 2. Court will now reconvene. Defense Attorney Kristoph Gavin, will you please take the stand? Not used to seeing you from this angle. Now then, if you would, Mr. Payne. Yes, Your Honor. Well, Mr. The witness state his name and occupation. So Mr. Payne was so smooth earlier with, God, I should have kept a burn counter on the side. Remind me next time. Really should have, because he had 76 burns, but now he's just totally lost, and I can't blame him because I think any reasonable person would be lost. Is this farce necessary, Your Honor? Believe me, far stranger things have gone on in this courtroom. What was that Mr. Payne said earlier? Take it from me, kid. He said something like, there's a lot of silly in this world, but very little impossible. Which was a very deep line. I love that one. Fine, I'll play along. First, there's one thing that we need to have made clear. How did you know about the secret beneath the victim's hat? By secret, I'm guessing he means the fact that Mr. Smith was bald. Forgive my curiosity, but what is it about this fellow's head? Your Honor seems to have an inordinate interest in it. Objection! Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Classic objection theme. It's Mr. Wright. Oh, this brings me back. I wouldn't call it inordinate, Mr. Gavin. Mr. Wright! What do you think you're doing, Wright? Well, things sure look different from the other side. You know what I mean, Apollo. That's the face I recognize. Speaking of looking from the other side, let's consider something for a second. The victim wore that hat all night, never once taking it off, except for that one time. That one time? Being the instant he was hit? Oh! When Mr. Wright returned reporting the crime, the hat was lying on the floor. Mr. Wright picked it up and placed it on the victim's head. In other words, in order to have seen Mr. Smith's bald head, you would have had to be at the scene of the crime. At the time of the crime! In other words, you'd have to be the real killer. Is that what you're trying to say? Melanie says, I mean, Residence 22 is a big fan of the room. That is absolutely true. Hey, Hargleblorg, I'm really glad you made it to the live stream. McKay says, did they put the old Objection theme in just for this? Oh, yeah, they did. Oh, yeah, they did. Not bad, Apollo. And now, Phoenix Wright, ladies and gentlemen, he's back. And he's ready to redeem himself. But it's a melancholy victory for sure, if it does so turn out to be that way. Mr. Wright did lie a lot in court. And Kristoph was his friend. Like a real friend. Mr. Gavin, I'm afraid that I haven't been entirely honest with the court. What? Oh, I assure you, I had the noblest of intentions. I did it all to protect my client, Mr. Wright. Huh? Yet, I'm afraid in the current situation, I see little reason to hide anything. Very well. Allow me to tell you the truth of what happened that night. Finally, you may begin your testimony. Tell us, how were you involved in the events of that fateful night? Oh yeah, the Allegro theme. The rage I sensed in the man that night troubled me, so I returned to the club. I went down to the basement and peeked in through the little window to the hideout. Remember how I mentioned earlier about the little window? There's no hideout layout photo here that actually shows that, but can you see it actually in this crime photo? There we go. So I believe he's talking about this window right here, and they mentioned this earlier on the case, as everything they say is usually relevant. So he's claiming that he just went down to the basement and peeked in through the little window to the hideout, which is essentially where back in the day the gangsters would have someone standing watch there. It must have been right after the murder took place. The victim was dead, as he appears in the photo. A bald head, an unconscious girl, and Wright holding a bottle in his hand. I sensed that this was not the best place for me to be at the time, and so I left. That's when the call came from Wright. Honestly, that's a pretty solid testimony. That's a very solid testimony. In fact, I don't see any contradictions in that at all. But then again, Kristoph is a very talented lawyer, so you wouldn't expect his cross-examination to be easy at all. For better or worse, I missed the actual moment of the deed. Mr. Gavin, may I remind you that you were on Mr. Wright's defense team? Your testimony is clearly disadvantageous to your client. Yeah, but Mr. Wright threw the first stone. What else could I say? I'm standing on the witness stand after all. So you are, Mr. Gavin. And you had to testify as you just did. You had to tell them you saw the scene of the crime through that little window. Mr. Wright? You had to say that. Because that was the only probable window of opportunity. Right, Apollo? Oh. Mr. Wright, the defense should do the cross-examination, not the defendant. Mr. Justice, are you prepared? Yes, Your Honor. I can't believe I'm going up against Mr. Gavin. This trial is getting weirder and weirder. That fateful night. The rage I sensed in that man that night troubled me, so I returned to the club. I'd like to press him on this. The statement's a little vague. I'm assuming he's referring to Mr. Wright, but I want to just double check. But we'll see. Hold it! That man, you mean Mr. Smith? He was different from the other customers. His aura, shall we say. I knew he was a serious poker player, but it was more than that. So then, you knew the true nature of your client's job? Of course. But I also knew he wasn't engaged in gambling, which would be illegal. Well, it makes sense that he'd know. They were friends after all. By client, he means Mr. Wright. Word from my friend, I returned to the club. You see, I feared this Mr. Smith might be someone coming to settle an old score. I see. What happened then? Well, that's actually a really reasonable response. Kristoph claims he sensed something wrong with Shoddy Smith, which I don't blame him, as he's absolutely correct that Shoddy Smith did have a score to settle. He hired Olga Orley a week in advance. This was a premeditated attempt to destroy Phoenix Wright, so I think it'd be fairly obvious to anyone in the restaurant that a man named Shoddy Smith, or if you pronounce it differently, Shady Smith, is a little shady. So that and alone, he did not admit to meeting the person, just seeing him, so didn't catch him there. That's fine. I went down to the basement and peeked in through the little window to the hideout. It must have been right after the murder took place. The victim was dead, as he appears in the photo. A bald head, an unconscious girl, and Wright holding the bottle in his hand. I sensed that this was not the best place for me to be at the time, and so I left. Don't blame him. Again, there's no contradiction in his testimony based off the evidence we have. I wonder when this card will come in handy. This be the missing fifth ace? Oh, it's red. Why does it have blood on it? I'm gonna press this statement. Hold it! Those were the only three at the scene of the crime? Yes. As far as I saw, at least. The reason I'm pressing him on this is mostly because of the way the crime scene's laid out. Like, because if Mr. Wright struck him with the bottle's pointed the wrong direction. So, well, it depends on how he struck him with the bottle. And where Mr. Wright was standing. But, I don't know. There's something that's suspicious about this statement. Maybe he'll give me more information. Isn't claimed to witness the murder actually happening, and I don't know where Mr. Wright was allegedly standing, but it is facing the right direction if he hit him from his side of the table. Then we're back to where we started. The killer was the defendant, Phoenix Wright. Who else could it have been? But why didn't you talk to the police? 2 reasons. First, I didn't actually witness the very moment of the crime. Second, my office was asked to defend Wright. Even after what I had seen, I couldn't abandon my friend. Objection! There must have been someone else there at the moment of the crime. Justice, I just said I saw no one, not a soul. But that goes against what Mr. Wright said. Ah yes, this mysterious 4th person. Who would conveniently be the real killer, I assume. Glad to see we agree, Mr. Gavin. Let me pose a question then. Tell me, what possible reason did the real killer have to swap the cards in the victim's hand? Perhaps you can show us a reason why such a thing would be necessary. How can I show something I can't find myself? Remember, Apollo, the card that was swapped out was the 5th ace. Pretty sure that's the 5th ace I have. The 5th ace. Right. Well, Mr. Justice? The question of why the killer would swap out the card has been raised. Can you point out to a reason? This is a tricky question. Can I point out to a reason? Well, if we examine the court record... Why swap out the card? Oh my god, I get it. Okay, so I think I get it. So this is the victim's hand, right? And the victim's hand is missing a card. It's this blue card right here, right? So a card was swapped from the victim's hand. We know that. But why? And Olga Orly testified that there was a 5th ace. This must have been the 5th ace. And maybe it's this. Maybe this is the trump card. Show evidence. It's now or never. The defense would like to present evidence to the court. I love that Apollo shows doubt during this case and that he's trying his best to believe in his mentor for years and such a respected attorney and a longtime friend of Phoenix Wright. Like, how could any of this be possible? It doesn't make any sense when you think about it. I mean, what connection does Kristoph Gavin even have to this guy? We don't even know how old he is. We know nothing about him. The only thing we know is that he had a vendetta against Phoenix Wright. And he, premeditated vendetta, hiring Olga Orly a week prior to be a waitress. Well, but the only way is to go deeper and find the truth. Evidence showing the reason why a card was swapped out. I love any character in any game that just touches the glasses like that. I love doing that too whenever I'm wearing sunglasses. Then go ahead and point out your reason, Mr. Justice. Why did the killer take the 5th ace? I'm gonna say it is the blood on the card, although the real question is whose blood is this? Huh. I don't know. But just in case the game crashes or anything, and I don't want to restart. I'm not going to use save states as a means to preserve my health, but I am going to use it as a means to preserve my sanity in case it crashes. Alright. Trump card. My main reason is, this. Is that an ace? Why? Why, it's got blood on it! Right next to the spade! What? This is insane! Why wasn't I told about this? Why? Could this be? Could this be the missing 5th ace? Inconceivable. How could you... What are you doing with that card? Well, that's the thing. Why is Mr. Gavin so upset? It's just a fishy card from some fishy girl. Oh, that card? It's mine. That is, I picked it up at the Borscht Bull Club the night after the murder had occurred. I gave it to my daughter. Cards are her stock and trade after all. Objection! No. Impossible. Unacceptable. The court can't accept this evidence. It's a fraud. A fraud? How can you be so sure? What? I would think the only person who could claim it was a fraud would be the one who took the real card from the crime scene. The real killer. Allow me to elaborate. What if this trace of blood was the reason? The reason for? For the killer to take the card from the scene of the crime. Where are you going with this? Take another look at the photo, and the victim's hand. At the moment of the crime, his hat fell on the floor, and a trickle of blood ran from his forehead down the back of his head. How could a drop of that blood have fallen on one of the cards? Ooh. Ruff uses Apollos to switch the card, he's the killer. They do crazy stuff like that, by the way, so you'll see. Obviously asks, what motive does Gavin have? None. He has no motive. At least that we've established. So, yeah. Goodbye, Mr. Ace says, all characters' glasses go all white due to a glint of life. Look evil. I know, right? But they're not always evil in every Ace Attorney game, and I love how they actually break tropes constantly. So, not every character with glasses that does the very stereotypical but objectively awesome little glasses tint thing is actually guilty or evil. I suppose. The killer then took the card to hide the blood. Objection! Regardless, the evidence is non-permissible. Oh? Right. Regardless of how you wasted that last 7 years. You used to be a lawyer. You know what a serious crime it is to conceal evidence. Oh, we can discuss the finer points of our legal system later. What's important now is I've answered your question. What are you talking about? You wanted to know why the killer would have taken a card from the crime scene. And now, I've told you. That one drop of blood would have been decisive evidence, you see. Objection! This is baseless conjecture. Baseless! Objection! Oh yeah, he's doing the finger point. Oh, I assure you, it's quite based. But what? It's amazing, really. Phoenix Wright's back! How a single drop of blood on a single card can lead us to the truth. It's quite simple. Well, Apollo? Yes? Try picturing the scene of the crime. In your head. Ah, we've gotten 3D! Where will you be when the acid kicks in? The murder took place in the hideout. The body of the luckless victim was found at the poker table. And before the killer swapped a card out, there was a single card with a drop of blood on it in the victim's hand. Given this, there is one decisive problem with this scene. Well, what is it? Let's keep it simple, shall we? Given that there was a drop of blood in the card, whose position in the diagram doesn't fit? Does anyone knows? If Mr. Ace says, no res, all of them are guilty and evil, they all have smelly faces. That's true. But they also do that awesome glasses tint thing. How many of you in my chat wear glasses? Like, is that not awesome to do? Or sunglasses? It's just so much fun. So, whose position in this diagram doesn't fit? The victims, the killers, the witnesses, the second witnesses? Whose position doesn't fit with the body count? Ooh, tricky, 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 tricky. So, this is the witness, Miss Olga Orley, or W for short. This is the killer, which would be Phoenix Wright. And then this would be Kristoph Gavin, who is looking through the window in the hideout, which actually does give him very clear line of sight. I love how they do this. To see our victim's head. So he would know that the victim actually had blood on his head. But the problem is, though, if I think about it a lot, and these are logic puzzles, the victim's body positioning doesn't make sense, because how else could the blood have dripped on the card? There are no cards on the floor beside him, right? Because the cards were on the table. And here's the thing. Okay, there were a lot of cards on the floor that we saw later, right? A lot of cards. But those the blood was on one of the cards in the victim's hand. It was his 5th ace. So in order for it to have spilled on his hand, the ace wouldn't have been on the floor. It must be the victim. Well, isn't it the victim's position that's the problem? I don't follow your logic here, Mr. Justice. Well, look. The victim was struck in the head, sending him back into his chair. You'd think any blood would fall behind the body, not onto the table in front of him. Ah. Take a look at the photo again. If he bled in this position, the blood would fall on the floor and not the cards. Why, that's right. So what does this mean? And notice that while there are cards on the floor, there are actually none behind Shoddy Smith, at least that we can see. But again, the real damning evidence is that it was the victim's hand that was tampered with. So it would have had to have been him. Incidentally, we were sitting in swivel chairs. Swivel chairs? I'm sitting in one right now. Oh God, am I the killer? Ah, jeez. All right, guys, I got in the stream. I think I might be in trouble. Apollo, try turning the chair around. Whoa, how do I turn the chair? Oh, did you see that play? Oh man, that was pretty sick. See the way I turned his chair around? The chair was facing the other way? It would have to be. Ah, it's 3D again. Acid flashbacks. The victim's chair was facing away from the table. When Mr. Wright returned from informing the police, which way was the chair facing? When I came back to the room, the body was facing as seen in this photo. That would mean the killer turned the chair back around. Let's take the next step. Look at the diagram once more. We now know that the victim was facing away from the table at the time of the murder. It's a shame. I don't know if yeah, Corbic's not here today, but last time he was like asking, he's like, when does the case get more convoluted? Oh, we're here. We're here, all right. We're in deep. Corbic, I hope you see this on YouTube. We now know that the victim was facing away from the table at the time of the murder. But what does it mean? But this creates another significant contradiction. Again? Let's test your reasoning skills again, shall we? Apollo, whose location on this diagram contradicts our new understanding of the crime? The victims, the killers, the witnesses, the second witnesses? Whose location creates a contradiction if the victim was facing away? So, I can't show you the court record, but I was talking about the bottle earlier, and I have a hunch, because again, the bottle was facing this way, right? So, I don't know. I mean, it would be very difficult, regardless of where the bottle was facing. I think it'd be very difficult for Mr. Wright to have actually killed the victim if the victim was facing this way. So, because Smith was struck from the front, it actually says with his autopsy report, I believe it said he was struck from the front. And, you know, his head's slouched backwards, obviously, because he dead, but... So I'm gonna say the killer. The victim was struck from the front, correct? Say the autopsy report? Yeah, a single blow to the forehead. Bingissimo. And as we can see here, yeah, he was struck right here. Front of his face. So it'd be very difficult to actually do that if he was facing that direction, rather than Mr. Wright if he, yeah, actually was striking him from the table. Indeed. Well, wouldn't it be hard for the killer to hit him from the front? Sitting where his indicator currently is? I would think it'd be quite hard, yes. Objection! Yes, but what you're saying makes no sense! Thank you, Mr. Payne, always the voice of reason. Why would the victim suddenly turn to face the wall in the middle of a game? Seriously, the voice of reason. Why the fuck? Why would you do that? I don't know. I believe a sufficient reason will come soon to light. What? There's something in this diagram that makes far less sense, actually. Look again at the diagram. Let's see who's onto something. Go Mr. Ray says, Fades to Black, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. John Fisk says, but that would have the second time Wright went to the basement, not the third. Interesting thought. Thalian says, Resonance is the killer, get him. Hey, Z Nobody, welcome, welcome. Good to see ya. Obviously says, so the killer swapped out the cards to conceal evidence, and Phoenix Wright just said that he took the card from the crime scene. So what's to say he isn't the killer? You're right, we really haven't honestly proven anything from that point. He took the card. But... That does contradict Mr. Gavin's testimony. Definitely. Let's look again at the diagram. Apollo, if the victim was struck while he was sitting as shown here, where would his assailant be standing? Try marking it in the diagram. What? But there's no room to put a mark where the killer should be. Don't worry. Let's think it through and see what we find. We know the victim was facing toward the wall at the time of the crime. That's the only thing we know for sure. Try to forget about everything else. Where would the killer have to be standing in order to strike the victim in front of him? Well, as absolutely nonsensical as it is, it would have to be here. Because he was struck in the forehead from the front. So, does that mean that the killer was inside the cabinet? Oh my. This raises a lot of questions. Take that! The killer had to be standing, well, here. Objection! There we go. Payne's regained his composure. Everybody give him a seems good. You get points for flair, but that's about all you get. Thought it was onto something there too. I hardly need to point out that standing there would be impossible. The victim is facing a solid cupboard. Or are you claiming the killer climbed the cupboard and hit him from above? Ha! It's simple logic, really. Yeah. Bring the pain train, everybody! Bring it! Thank you. Super Sass, was he banging his head against the bookcase? Doesn't seem to be the case, because if we check... But you've all made this Let's Play extra special by going through with me. Here's the thing. Death caused by a single blow to the forehead. So if he actually committed Sudoku and banged his head into the cupboard to kill himself, then he would have to have done it in one blow, and there would have likely been blood on the cupboard. If this was the only place the killer could have been standing, then that means that at the very moment of the crime... Wait, I know! At the moment of the crime, the cupboard wasn't there! And I think that is the perfect moment to end on. What the hell? What the hell? So, that is the end of part 5. In part 6, we're finishing this case. Thank you so much for joining me on this wild ride. I hope you've all been enjoying it so far. If you've been enjoying the stream, please do follow. If you're on YouTube, then please do leave a like and a comment and subscribe, and make sure to enable notifications if you do. I really appreciate it. I understand that this comes in a huge string of uploads, and I don't normally like to, dump all this stuff in a row, but I gotta get all these out of the way before AOED comes out, and if you're a real supporter of the channel, then I think you'd really, really enjoy this. I love to hear your feedback. I hope that this has been as exciting for you as it's been for me, but we're not done yet. We're getting there. We're very close. So in part 6 is the finale. Who was the real killer? The cupboard wasn't there? Oh, I love it. Absolute madness. This is Ace Attorney. Now, if this is fairly well received, then not only am I more than happy to do more Age of Empires 2 content, but I'm also more than happy to do more Ace Attorney content, as this is some of the most fun I've had on stream, you know, since maybe Kirby, and Meteos as well. But I really love voice acting the characters, and just, this is my favorite game universe by far. It's not my favorite game, but it's my favorite game universe. And I would love to do more of this, so just let me know. But for those of you watching live, stay tuned, don't go anywhere, because if you leave right now... What are you doing? What are you doing? The conclusion is literally right around the corner. What are you leaving? You don't want to be like the cupboard and not be there at the moment of the crime when it's solved. So, stick around, stay tuned. Thank you so much for your support. And if you watch on YouTube, by the way, and you watch up to 30 seconds of an ad, I actually get ad revenue for it. But if you skip it, apparently I don't. But everyone hates ads, so I understand. Don't watch a 4-minute ad. Don't do that for me. It's okay. It's okay. But I appreciate those of you who, you know, watch 30 seconds and grab a cold one with the boys. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Click the annotations on the screen for the next part. And seriously, appreciate all the support. Stay tuned. Forrest says at the beginning of this case, we only saw a fraction of all that there really was. But finally, now, we shall now see it all, that is. Indeed. These would also make great YouTube comments, so do keep that in mind, and perhaps leave that as a YouTube comment when it gets posted. Again, appreciate the support. I'm going to be montaging these out, so every like and every comment helps tremendously. Alright, we'll be right back in about 2 minutes for the exciting conclusion.